Hello again, guys. Welcome back to episode 4 of DMAH and the Mic Drop. It's been a while, but we missed you, and we're glad to be back. Before we go into today's podcast, keep in mind that we all have our own things going on. Mike has a fantastic food show on the internet called A Show About Food. Be sure to check that out, give his videos a like, and subscribe for awesome food tutorials and food adventures. And you guys might know me from Marshall Club. We are going hot right now, getting ready for that big drop on July 20th. Be sure to visit Marshall Club, like our videos, and show us some love there as well. But without much further ado, Mike, how have you been doing?
I've been doing good. I've been doing... Actually, it has been a super tiring weekend, largely because the 4th of July was basically the most ridiculous display of American commerce that I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure we saw something on the order of like $10+ million of fireworks go off in the South Bay area of Los Angeles, where we live. Daniel and I hung out, and we went up to our roof, and it was just absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I can pretty comfortably say that was more fireworks in one night than I've seen in at least half of my life, maybe all of my life. It was over an hour of continuous fireworks, like literally
hours,
every
dude.
second, boom, 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 boom. 4 hours. 4 hours. Really, really crazy, unprecedented show of colorful spectacle. And I'm pretty sure if aliens were watching us from outer space, they'd be like, I don't get it. Who are they fighting?
No, dude, I'm pretty sure they would have been like, oh no, they have invisible monsters. Abort. Let's go to a different mission. Go to a different planet.
We've severely underestimated their firepower.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting though. Like, it's so interesting to look at something like that as a form of protest, because this is one of the first years in a long time where they're calling a ban to official fireworks shows. So the people's response is they shell out extra money and they buy way more fireworks than ever before and firing them off all at the same time.
Yeah.
And like cities all with it, like as far as the eye can see, you could just see bursts of blue and red and green and yellow all throughout the night. And it was just nonstop. It's like, where is all this money coming from?
Dude, I straight up was hearing the Star Spangled Banner go off in the like in my ears, in my inner, what is that?
Yeah.
Soundtrack, in my inner soundtrack.
Yeah.
Red rockets
Sure.
glare.
It was like,
bumps bursting in air.
yeah. Seriously. What was playing in my head, though, was, in the very end of V for Vendetta, when they bomb Parliament, and it's like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and it's like, because, like, it had that air of rebellion to it,
Yeah.
because clearly what we were seeing is illegal, but it's happening everywhere. And, the authorities, the powers that be, are completely powerless to stop it. And it was kind of beautiful,
Yeah, absolutely.
But, easily the best firework display I've ever seen. And it was
Same.
completely free. And it
Same.
was amazing.
It was just really interesting because you could look out at the horizon and see fireworks in every single direction. The entire horizon was covered with individual explosions of, those reds, whites, and blues, and greens, and purples. And it was just really fascinating because, like, you knew that this was a different neighborhood, a different person, a different area of Los Angeles firing off fireworks. And it's also interesting because from our vantage, we had the opportunity to see something that any of the individual people setting off those fireworks didn't have the opportunity to see. Because we were on the roof of my house, which is already a 2-story house. So it was basically the third story. And if you think about it, if you're on the ground floor setting off a firework, you get like, oh yeah, you get to see an awesome firework right in front of you. But like, you don't get to see something happening 2 miles away, 3 miles away, 4 miles away.
Right.
But for us, we saw everything. And it was really, really awesome in that regard.
Yeah, and not to mention in your area, like your house is already elevated higher than a lot of the other houses on the street. So like, it feels like, without exaggerating too much, that you're on top of the world, and you can really see for miles. And that one finale towards the end where it's just like for like 3 minutes straight, like that felt like it was 1 block away, but that was probably in reality like several miles. But it looked like it was right there in your face. Very impressive view.
There was just like, honestly, it I felt it in a very, I don't want to say spiritual way, but like it felt like it was resonating with me on a really, really primal level. That's very hard to describe, you know? Like I remember going the next day to YouTube and trying to replicate like, oh wow, like this is how amazing it was. And I saw a lot of like helicopter views, drone views, and they were cool. They were very beautiful in a different way. But just to be there, like to feel the rumble of the fireworks and experience that firsthand, I don't think that I will ever experience anything like that, because I think it's just like this is a culmination of so many different factors. It's like the fact that they shut down fireworks, like you said, and that they didn't do public displays of fireworks in Los Angeles, like all the beach fireworks, so that, you know, like the park fireworks that were planned, canceled by the I think mayor or governor or somebody canceled them all, and everyone's pent up because of COVID, and you know, it's just like all these different things are piling up. And people are expressing themselves in a, I think, kind of interesting phenomenon, in an interesting way that ends up being like a really fascinating and beautiful phenomenon to witness.
Yeah, like there was definitely something intangible there, something very strong and tangible happening at the same time. Like first, the fireworks, you know, it's so funny because fireworks I associate with Disneyland, or I associate it with, you know, a very, I guess, there's something about fireworks that's very elevated. It's like it happens at fancy events, it happens at fancy venues, and yet these fireworks are being shot off by, you know, I hate to say it, but minorities, you know? And like I saw a joke that said, well, I guess it's clear how people spent their stimulus checks, you know. But at the same time, this is more spectacular of a display of this kind of thing than you'll ever see at any of the highest venues in the world. Like it'll in our lifetime, it's kind of safe to say you'll never see it quite like this ever again. And yet this was something that was made possible by the collective and probably the lower part of our society, you know.
Unquestionably.
Like in one economic measure. And it's just like the irony of it, like somehow seasons the display and makes it even more enjoyable. And there was one other thing, and I don't know if well, I don't know, I'm curious to see if you picked up on this, but like we had a fairly large group on the roof, all socially distanced, all wearing, you know, masks and all. But like, you know, there were people there as couples, there were people there by themselves, there were people there recently broken up or newly in relationships, and there were people there having just come out of town. So everybody was, it felt like, and I don't know this for sure, but it felt like everybody was in a slightly different emotional place. And the way they respond to this spectacular light show in the sky seemed to amplify what they were feeling in some way, and it kind of scented the atmosphere.
Yeah. Interestingly, as you looked out into the distance, and you know, you could look around, look at the different neighborhoods. I live kind of in a not super nice neighborhood, but I'm adjacent to super not nice neighborhoods and super nice neighborhoods. So I'm kind of in this like cross section.
Very interesting.
And if you look out in the super not nice neighborhoods, just to like reaffirm what Daniel was saying, like those were the neighborhoods that were most vibrant in terms of the displays you'd see. It was also interesting because you could even see like those didn't have the crazy super expensive fireworks by and large, but they'd be going off nonstop. They would just be like a firework here, a firework there, and just all in that general direction. But if you look at Palos Verdes, which is a super bougie, nice area, you once in a while see a super beautiful firework go off, but it would only be like once every like blue moon, you know, like it would just go off like once every couple minutes. And I remember I sent a video of me on the roof to some of my friends, and some of my friends replied like, hey, look, wow, Redondo Beach. Nothing, because somebody will set off a firework and police will be there like that. But it was interesting. You know, I was glad to live where I live for that reason.
Yeah. Very interesting location to see both sides to be able to look up and be able to look down. And during that finale, it was so funny because it felt like there were two finales going on, one to our south and one to our north, right? And then like one had the really nice fireworks, but not that many happening, in rapid succession, and the other one was just like nonstop chaos for like a couple minutes, and it was an amazing comparison. And the north side won. It was amazing how it was triumph for the underdogs,
Yeah.
Dude, I'm super excited for this week because I remember we even talked about this while we were there. While we were there, we found out that the main event for UFC 251, which is this weekend, it's like easily going to be one of the biggest fight cards of the year. Easy, like hands down one of the top ones, if not the top one. And then right before when we were meeting, we found out that the main event of that card fell through because the contender tested positive for COVID, right? And then I remember I told you about it. I'm like, dude, did you hear about it? That sucks because like it was a stacked card, and to have the crown jewel of it just snatched like that. So you told me to call that fight. If I had to make up the backup fight, call it. And what did I say, Mike? What did I say?
You said you were pulling your modern day Daniel routine, and you prophetized. Prophetized. That's a word. Yeah, it's totally a word. Prophesied. I'm definitely not a charismatic Christian. You prophesied sized Jorge Masvidal versus Kamaru Usman, and even though we might not get this out in time, no, we can probably get it out in time. We can get it out in time for yeah. Man, you called it. And I think, honestly, now that I kind of review it, it's a good matchup. It is a good matchup. I'm not convinced that Kamaru won't bully Masvidal with his wrestling,
right?
Because I think he has the chops to do it. But we'll see. I think it'll be exciting. I still wish that they put Conor in there against Kamaru because I just want to see Conor fight again. He's host unto himself.
You could match up Conor with a frozen burrito from 7-Eleven, and that would still do better than most of the cards this year. But that being said, I'm really okay. So let's take it back a couple months to April when it was supposed to be Habib versus Tony. Like, for those of you guys who don't follow MMA, this was supposed to be like a prophesied match. There's like something extraordinary about this matchup because they've tried to do it 4 times. And April, this was going to be the 5th time. This time it was going to happen. Like, for sure, everybody's healthy now. Yeah.
You have to explain why how it fell apart. Because, like, it's 4 times. It's not just like, I don't feel like it, or like 4.
Yeah.
You explain. You remember them all.
Okay. So you have 2 fighters, right? One guy's name is Habib. Like, crazy Russian cyborg. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Undefeated in MMA.
Bear slaying cyborg.
Like as a child he wrestled bears, like real life brown bears. Like baby bears, like granted, but like bears that were his size, and he would be able to wrestle them. And that kind of transferred over to his adult life in MMA because he's undefeated, and not only is he undefeated, like up until now he's only lost 1 round. Like, as in, like, the person smacked him in the face a couple times more than usual. Like, he dominates people. Like, he gets them to the ground, and you see this look of utter despair on their faces. So not only does he always win, he always wins in devastating fashion. And now he's the champion of the lightweight division in MMA. And you have this other guy who's constantly touted as the only guy in the world who has a chance to beat him, who even has a chance to stand up to him. And the thing is, they've tried to make them fight several times in the past. And the first time they tried to make them up, somebody missed weight. And the second time they tried to match them up, the other guy missed weight. And then the third time, over a year later, they tried to match them up, one guy gets injured. And then the 4th time, the other guy gets injured. So it's like, there's this supernatural mystique that hangs in the air around this fight. And now it was going to be the 5th time back in April that they were going to make the fight. And we're like, okay, like too many crazy things have happened. The 5th time has to be the charm. Otherwise, this fight is cursed. And guess what? This global pandemic smacks the entire world, and suddenly the fight is obliterated. And then not only does the fight fall through for an unprecedented 5th time, that guy who was supposed to challenge him ends up taking another fight and ends up getting his ass handed to him. And now we probably don't get the fight. And even if we do, it's not the same fight we were hoping for. Because one guy was undefeated and the other guy was undefeated in 8 years. And now it's like, it's just any other fight, I think. And everybody was thinking this fight is cursed and the MMA gods, there is no other god but God. But the MMA gods, lowercase g, must be angry. They must hate us, right? Because we can't have nice things. And then suddenly, like, the main event of this upcoming card gets taken down, and we're like, dude, what are we doing? Like, why do they hate us so much? But not only do they replace it with an even better fight, they replace it with one of the fights that, like, we needed all along. Because honestly, I think Jorge Masvidal is the rightful number 1 contender. Like, the ranks say he's number 3, but I think he was the one who was next in line to fight for the championship in the welterweight division. And that fell through. And we're like, at that point, we were just so pessimistic because we'd lost so many good things. But now, unexpectedly, it just drops right back into our laps. And like in a really entertaining fashion. So I'm super, super excited for what happens on Saturday.
Who else is in the top 5 at 170? It's
170?
It's Masvidal, Covington. Yeah.
Masvidal, Covington, Usman's the champion. Woodley is still number 5, even though he lost to Gilbert Burns, who is now number 1. Mm-hmm. I think that's a little ridiculous because Burns just came out of nowhere. Not taking away from who he is as a fighter. And I think the other one is Wonder Boy. He's still in there.
Got it. Interesting. It's fascinating to me because 170 used to be such a fun division. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like a lot of those names, the only one that really kind of like gets my attention is Wonder Boy. You know, like the Covington and Kamaru are very, very similar fighters that are kind of boring to me. Yeah. And Tyron Woodley is like kind of similar, but like a little bit exaggerated in terms of like he's more like a one punch knockout guy, but also wrestling base. Yeah. Like ultra surprised that it's not as interesting.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I think there's this big disparity between how interesting the fighters are on paper, and I'm talking about the welterweight division, how interesting the fighters are on paper and how interesting their personalities are. Because I think, like, what you said still goes. Like, the matchups aren't that interesting, but their personalities are larger than life. So I think a lot of the hype still surrounds this division simply because a lot of the people in the top 5 make the headlines. Because take Jorge Masvidal. He has had an amazing career. Like, up until last year, I think he would have been considered a journeyman fighter, a 500 fighter, someone who loses
easily
just as often as they win. And you remember we met that girl Lorena at the rock climbing gym? Yeah, she was telling us about Jorge Masvidal. So we met Lorena. I forgot what her last name is, but she goes by Lorena Parkour on Instagram. She herself is like a minor celebrity. Abreu. Okay. I
think.
Yeah. So we happened to find out that she was on this Latin American reality show with 2 of the top figures in UFC right now, Jorge Masvidal and Yoel Romero, because they're all like big in the Latin American world of entertainment. And what's really funny is that she met Jorge Masvidal right at the moment that he dubs as his resurrection, that moment where something clicked in his head and he just had this resurgence in MMA. Because like I said, at that point, he was kind of that person that you were destined to fade into obscurity because like his career wasn't going anywhere. He's had a really storied life.
Gatekeeper.
He's a gatekeeper, meaning like he's that level that like to beat him means you're in the top, you're in the elite section of that division, but that person himself will probably never ascend to greatness. He kind of just serves as the benchmark for greatness. And he's interesting, though, because he started off fighting in the streets of Miami. Like, this sounds like a video game. This is like Street Fighter. Because when Kimbo Slice, who was an online sensation, he was this big black guy who was famous for bare-knuckle boxing in backyards, and his videos went viral on the internet. Jorge Masvidal was just one of the little kids who was fighting in those backyard fights. And, you know, like, he was good enough to make it into professional fighting, but, like, he wasn't really going anywhere. And suddenly he goes on to this game show and has a bunch of time to just go away from society, turn off his phone, and focus on himself. And apparently he figured out something very profound and special about himself. Because the second he came back to the UFC after that, he was on fire. And I mean like on fire. He had this meteoric rise to the top. And now he's fighting for the championship this weekend. Like, he beat 4 pretty high profile guys in a very, very fast amount of time. Like, in very rapid succession. He was just knocking them out. And like, not only knocking them out, but knocking them out in devastating fashion. One of his fights, he ended it in the fastest time in UFC history. He finished the fight in 5 seconds. He, like, the moment that they called fight, he ran and like he flying kneed the guy. It was like straight out of Ong Bak. And the truth is, the guy was knocked out in 2 seconds. But in the time that it took the ref to stop the fight, 5 seconds had elapsed. Still the fastest KO time in UFC history, and probably not going to be beaten. You never know. You never know. Crazy things happen.
I think it's particularly interesting because I am almost certain that part of the reason that the show was a success for him was probably helping him reevaluate how to package himself as a celebrity. Because like reality TV, like the producers are always in your ear about how to like talk, how to, not necessarily how to talk, but they're trying to get you to say things that are interesting. So if you pay attention and you're like discerning, you'll see like, this is what people want to see. This is the drama. This is the intrigue people want to see. And like, a lot of people are like normally not so like, they're not caricatures of themselves, but I'm pretty sure that show helped Jorge Masvidal like kind of channel his inner WWE character.
Yeah. But I definitely agree with that. But what's so crazy about Jorge Masvidal is there's this effortlessness to like his one-liners. Like he manages to shake up the world just by saying one very, very witty, well-placed line in an interview, you know? Like I was hearing someone say that rising to stardom in MMA is very tricky because you have to win, yes, but you can't just win. You have to win in spectacular fashion, and then you have to say something very, very special on the mic afterwards. And it's like he's got it all figured out somehow. You know, he goes on the mic, and it doesn't even look like he's trying to put on a front or, like you said, be a caricature of himself. He just says what he would normally say, and like people like blow up, you know, like I think that was part of his success. He would beat people in devastating fashion, and then he would happen to be in the right place and in the right moment to say something awesome on the camera, and then suddenly he's a superstar. And I don't know, how do you put that in a bottle? How do you catch lightning in a bottle like that? Because it's hard for me to believe that all you had to do was go to some island and participate in some, you know, hokey reality TV show to figure all of that out.
Yeah, I'm sure it's also a combination of that and like his maturation as a fighter and him just kind of being probably in the best shape of his life. But like it's interesting because like you look at people like him, and then like the person that I immediately thought of as a counterpoint is Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler is one of my very, very, very favorite fighters. Amazing striker, probably one of the better ones in the game today. But he is like terrible on the mic. He doesn't like say anything. Like he said, he's actually like quite charming, but like he's not like a WWE character, you know, like he's charming because he's like real. He's super low key, like funny and just not like a big deal. And because he like downplays everything, it doesn't make headlines. You know, it's not as compelling. It's not as interesting. He's like the very opposite to Colby Covington, who is like all talk, you know, quite boring as a fighter. I mean, like not totally boring, but not exciting as a fighter. And just like really, really good at blowing up the mic and being entertaining, even if it's by being a jerk.
Yeah, for those of you guys who don't know Colby Covington, he's one of those fighters who's interesting because you might have heard of him, but you might not know him for what he does best, which is fighting. But he, you know...
Wait, he's best at fighting? I thought he was best at talking.
Well, yeah, you caught me. Because he himself was on the chopping block. Because even though he was winning fights, he was so boring that he was about to be cut from the UFC. As a fighter, he was about to be cut from the UFC because he just wasn't delivering the entertainment. And he also had like a very I guess, intimate heart-to-heart with himself. And it's like, what do I need to do to turn this around? And he went the other way. He went like super, super heel. So he started saying outrageous things, pissing off people in real life, outlining himself very strongly with Trump. And he started wearing really cheap suits and kind of portraying himself as like the biggest douchey McDouchebag you could possibly imagine. And it worked. It worked. He suddenly, like, the UFC is like, oh no, we're hanging on to you. And now he can do no wrong. Even losing, he can do no wrong. And I think he was really smart because it's like, well, I can win the fights or I can get people to want to pay to watch me lose. And now he's like one of the hottest commodities in his division. And it's really, I find Jorge Masvidal and Colby Covington to be very interesting character studies because these are people with their backs to the wall. And they found a way to make the situation work for them. And I think something in their stories is very valuable for us to learn. Yeah. And
I want to see them fight.
Oh, yeah. And I think if well, actually, that's the cool thing. Because regardless of whether Masvidal wins this weekend, we can still see it, Like, he can challenge him and call him out as champion or get called out as champion. Or it would just be like a very entertaining matchup to make in the elite part of the welterweight division. Anyways, I didn't mean to like steer us in MMA. I know people tune out on that.
Last thought, it's actually super interesting with this Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal thing, where they both have interesting characters, interesting personas they've built up and had this resurgence because they're actually teammates, or they were teammates.
Yeah, that adds to the drama.
They used to be friends, like actually friends. And basically Jorge Masvidal doesn't like the fake shtick. And basically like Colby Covington was being fake, just like being his personality. And Jorge called him on it. And I'm pretty sure Colby was like, inside was like, dude, like this is what I have to do to make a living. Like, it is what it is. But like, he couldn't back down, so he didn't back down. And I think Jorge, being a little bit more real and like he says he's from the streets, doesn't tolerate that. So now there's like real bad blood and they both want to knock each other's heads off. Or at least Jorge does. I'm pretty sure Colby probably doesn't care that much. I kind of feel like he's just, like when you see the confrontations out of the ring, he's ready to talk, but like his body language says like, dude, cut it out. His body language says, like, let's get paid for this, don't be an idiot. Kind of like Chael Sonnen, where Chael will actually turn it off when it's not in the right place, which is kind of cool. Like, I really, really respect that. Colby never turns it off. He's always, like, in character, which I guess you have to tip your cap to him, to, like, make himself such a interesting and desirable commodity, like Daniel said. But it's also, like, it's dangerous because if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, you're going to get like punched in the face because these guys are professional fighters,
There's a point where push comes to a very real shove, and really shove, like a real shove means you can get kneed in the face at 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But I think that's why we watch it, because it's like, dude, this is better than reality television.
No, it's absolutely better than reality television. It's better than, WWE and all that stuff. Sometimes it's disappointing, but it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, seriously. I don't know. Like, I think that's why I like combat sports, because if you look carefully, it kind of gives you a glimpse into very rare episodes of the human soul. Because, like, even though most of it is spectacle, most of it's bright lights and glitter and all of that, these are real people faced with very real challenges. And sometimes these challenges are bigger in scope than the ones you'll find in your life. But at the same time, sometimes they echo the intensity of challenges you'll encounter in life. And you're seeing them front and center handling these problems in front of a camera. And every once in a while, you get inspired by how they respond, and you find a way to apply it to your own life. And I think that's one of those like subtle things that you pick up on when you watch sports like this. And it kind of harkens back to that conversation we were having a couple episodes ago when we talk about why people tune into sports. or other, methods of entertainment, because I think if you look carefully enough, there is, I guess, a dramatization of what's happening in your own life that you can kind of place onto this simulated battle, except it's enhanced by the fact that it's not so simulated. People are actually getting hurt. And I don't know. I was waxing philosophical.
No, it's absolutely true. I think that there's also something very like real and visceral to competitive endeavors that resonates with us on like almost a biological level, probably on a biological level. Like we have been playing sports and fighting and mock fighting since near the beginning of time, near the beginning of our history as humans, and to like, to enter an age of civilization where we basically deny ourselves of that, like deny ourselves of like real competitive endeavors, like physical and competitive endeavors. I'm not surprised that like there's a part of us that still wants to see that exercised.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie Troy? The one
I have. Brad Pitt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I bring it up because I think Ulysses, the character Ulysses, or Odysseus, right? The same character. In Greek, it's Odysseus, right?
Is it?
Well, it's called the Odyssey, so it's Odysseus, right?
I can't remember. Who kills Hector of Troy?
Hector
Ulysses.
is killed by Achilles.
Yes.
That's Brad Pitt. But Ulysses, Ulysses is the Roman version of Odysseus. Okay, there we go. Sorry. So Odysseus is he's the strategist, So Achilles is a great warrior, Hector is a great warrior, but it's Odysseus who ends the war because he uses his mind to devise the Trojan horse. And in the movie Troy, he's kind of the narrator of the movie. He's played by Eric Bana, I think. Or was it Hector?
No, Eric Bana was Hector.
Hector was Eric Bana. Okay, right.
Yes.
Odysseus was Sean Bean. And he actually survives in this movie.
Yes.
There's that joke that he gets killed in every movie. But the reason I bring this movie up is because he closes the movie with a soliloquy, I guess it would be called. And he says, "If ever they write stories about me, let it be said that I walked during the time of Achilles. Let it be said that I walked during the time of Hector." And it's kind of like he interacted with these larger-than-life people, and his actions influenced the course of their lives. And just the fact that he walked the same steps and breathed the same air, that kind of lended an epic quality to his own life. And I think we as people are always seeking to do that, because the unfortunate truth is many of us will live mundane lives. But there are, every once in a while, someone who's larger than life goes into the world and makes waves. And we as people want to find a way to resonate with them, to be connected to them somehow. And I think that's why people tune into movies or watch sports or chase people down for their autographs, because they want to be able to have a part of their story, And it's that interesting thing that we do as humans. It's like whether we're in a low station in life or a high station in life, we want to do something that lends significance to our little time here on Earth. And, I really resonated with those lines that Sean Bean delivered at the end of the movie, because when I was seeing all of this happen, the whole movie play out, it was so easy for me to substitute the name Achilles with Andy Lee, and to substitute the name Hector with Brian Lee, And in fact, I actually made an Instagram post about this where I took the exact same lines, subbed it out. I'm like, let it be said that I walked during the time of Andy Lee, and that I walked during the time of Brian Lee, And we're still young. There's still a lot of time to leave our fingerprint on this world.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, but it's like every once in a while, I find myself, I know this is getting sappy. I find myself extremely fortunate to have met them, because they're doing amazing things, and they're truly a rare talent. There are plenty of good martial artists in this world, but there's something truly special about them. And I'm wondering, like, because we actually had a conversation the other day when the Bruce Lee skit was doing well. So we reconvened to see what our next strategy was. And that's how we came up with this big video that we're going to drop on July 20th, which is the death day of Bruce Lee. And stay tuned to see what that's going to be. You probably know if you've been following us. But what it did was it led us into this discussion about where we come from as martial artists. And I myself, in my private musings, have always wondered, why is it that, in the beginning of the 21st century, in this little neighborhood in the Orange County, why is there an unprecedented amount of talented martial artists all growing up within 5 miles of each other? Like, you have all these amazing acrobats, amazing martial artists, and they're all going out and they're making splashes on social media, and they're working their way into the movies, and they're basically like dominating this little corner of the martial arts world from their backyards in the Orange County. Like, what is it that allows this hotbed of martial arts talent to exist? So I started thinking, what do they have in common? They're all second generation of Southeast Asians who recently immigrated to this country. And all of their parents, I got to know Andy and Brian and some of our other friends in the community, I started to realize their parents were born under punches. Actually, let me sub out punches for something more real and something more accurate to the situation: machine gun fire. A lot of them come from embattled nations like Vietnam, like Myanmar, like Thailand. Not Thailand, sorry. Sorry, not Thailand. Thailand's pretty well-to-do.
We're not well-to-do, but we've
Not
managed to...
Thailand is doing well, but not because of the difference in circumstances. I'd say pretty much every country in Southeast Asia was born under punches, and in some of these cases, machine gun fire. And a lot of their parents came to this land on boats, and a lot of them were interned in camps at certain points of their lives. And they came here with nothing to their names, and they had to Andy and Brian's parents had to struggle for years at local swap meets, just selling restaurant supplies, spoons, bowls, forks, chopsticks, until they were finally able to buy a house and make a life for Andy and Brian. So it's like spending your entire life pushing at 110% to the point where that's all you know, and to the point where that's all your children know, because they grow up and the only thing they have to look at is you pushing super, super hard. So they learn that the default gear is overdrive. And I think that's what makes Andy and Brian so successful at what they do, because whatever they put their minds to, whatever they even try, the only gear they have is push hard AF, overdrive. There's no such thing as half-assing anything. There's no such thing as just trying casually. It's like anything they do it to win. And even if it's something they don't want to do, like school, I don't want to be here, but I'm going to be here. I'm just going to put everything into it, 110%. And that's why Andy and Brian are straight A students, as well as world-class martial artists.
Awesome.
Yeah, as well as, stuntmen killing it. And, even when it comes to acting, they have this certain charisma about them because it comes from only doing things 110%. So it's just amazing that exists in such plentiful quantities in that little area. The density of talent there is super, super high. And that's a unique thing. It's a melting pot effect that it only happens in that area. Not in that area, but with that seasoning, with those ingredients to that effect, it's only in that area in the world. And I find that supremely fascinating.
Yeah, I think you could look at that effect and see it in almost every heavily war-torn nation. Just a drive to excel because the fear of poverty, the fear of hunger, the fear of war, and basically having your necessities taken away from you, instill a very desperate desire to thrive, to survive. Because a lot of the people who aren't thriving don't have the means to flee when war comes calling, when the machine guns come to your hometown. You know, you need means to be able to escape, and I think honestly, it lends itself to this very interesting cycle. My dad told me once that basically, if you look at generations, you can see that it always starts with in poverty, or poverty, the impoverished and poverty, and people rising from that to make means for themselves. And the further away from poverty people get, the less hungry they become, which lends itself to fall into a cycle of poverty once more. Right. And I always try to hold like fast to that idea. You know, like when it comes time for me to raise children, if God blesses me with the opportunity to raise children, I don't want them to like live without want. You know, I want them to live having their needs met, but I don't want to have them live wanting nothing. You know, I want them to be hungry. Maybe not like hungry, like, oh, I need food, but like, no, you want that new phone. This is how you can earn it. You know, you want to play video games. You want to buy the newest thing. Sure, but you have to meet these qualifications to deserve it. I don't want to be a dad who like, oh, I didn't have it, therefore I want you to have everything. I'm going to buy you all the gifts, all the toys, because that teaches them that they don't have to work to get what they want. And if they don't learn how to work to get what they want, then how will they be able to work when you're not there to provide for them? And how will they be able to teach the lessons to their children about how to want? Like even if I had all the money in the world, I don't want to, and even if I could set up all my generations to the, you know, future reasonably foreseeable future, and just set them up for success with intelligent investments and all like that, I wouldn't want that. I'd want to, set a side amount to protect them from like great catastrophe, but I wouldn't want them to not know what it's like to earn their mettle and really fight for survival, because I think that's something that allows us as a species to not just survive but excel. Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because we don't determine the circumstances under which we're born. Like we can't control the fact that whether we're born to people in impoverished nations or, you know, here in the United States, the richest nation in the world. Like our circumstances are decided for us, but who we decide to make ourselves in response to our circumstances, that's up to us. And it's that delicate balance between nature and nurture. And like you learned these lessons from your dad, and you want to pass those lessons on to your children, should God, you know, bless you enough to have children. And it's like you want the circumstances to be played in their favor, but you at the same time you don't want them to struggle in vain. So and like before we apply that to people who haven't even been born yet, we apply that to ourselves. It's like if we were born in more fortunate circumstances, how do we find that hunger that allows us to push hard and succeed? And I don't know. It's honestly, it's stuff like that I think about every day, whether consciously or subconsciously, because like I don't have a lot to complain about, you know, but that doesn't mean I don't. It just means that like I have to find a reason to be motivated. And I was just thinking about that, but at the same time, that's not to say that my life is void of struggle. You know, there are my own things that I have found set against me when I was little, and like who I am today is a composite of my reactions to those circumstances. And I'm hoping to say that I managed to become a decent person in response to them. And if I haven't yet, then that's what I'm working on. But it's like no matter who we are, we have to find our reason to push. We have to find that hunger, that reason to be hungry.
It's fascinating because I think like absent the motivation to improve, and the need to improve. It's kind of the two-part, the two different sides of this entire situation. It's like you have to have the motivation and the desire to improve. And if you lack one of them, there are many people who are impoverished, many people who have need and are hungry, but they're not hungry enough, or they're not motivated enough to act upon their situation and improve it. So it's not just being hungry. It's not just being poor. It's kind of like you require both things. And if you lack more of one, you need more of the other.
So that is to say that there's a component within us that has to choose to act according to those circumstances, right? Like that.
Exactly.
As Nietzsche were to say, that will to power, right? Not to get all like pagan philosophical on you, but like there has to be that fire inside of us that decides to react to adverse situations and make something of it. And just because you're born under punches or under machine gun fire doesn't mean you're automatically going to respond in a way that makes you get ahead. Like, you still have to decide to push. And I think that's like the deciding factor.
And some people break, some people want to push, but they just break under the strain of those circumstances. It's an interesting situation because I think that it's not just the fact that they are born under machine gun fire and they push, but it's because you are seeing the people who are born under machine gun fire. That's an interesting verbiage we've started picking up. But yeah, these are people who are born under heavily conflict-ridden situations who do push, because the people who didn't push, the people who didn't fight, were left behind. So you're not exposed to those people. You're exposed to the people who fought tooth and nail to get out of that situation, to improve their means, their circumstance, and because of that, you see them. It's not just a carte blanche. Apply this type of situation to people, and you will have a universal outcome where everyone improves. No, like you'll have people who get left behind. You'll have people who get swallowed up by that really, really unfortunate situation. But it will birth also people who have a fighting instinct, who are willing to do what it takes to get past their circumstances.
That got pretty deep, but I feel like we arrived here in a pretty seamless way. I don't know. You guys watching can decide whether we did or not, but I enjoyed that.
Yeah. In general, like, we might have a topic or two that we try to approach because we think, oh, like, this is really important and we want to talk about it. And it's like, it's happening now. But more than half the time, we hop on the line and we start talking. It's just like, hey, Daniel, how's it going? It's like what we would be talking about if we were on a drive together.
Right.
Out to go get food. Eventually, I think we will kind of shape our podcasting skill and figure out what voice makes the most sense to share, because we have many thoughts and many ideas, and it probably makes sense to refine them for you. But it's fun, and thank you so much for bearing with us as we embark on this journey together with you.
Yes, thank you for being our whetstone. That was you guys are sharpening us all the time, and we couldn't thank you more for it.
I do want to hear more about the big drop, but I feel like we should save that for another episode. I feel like that's something that, like, right before, you could give people snippets and trailers or, sneak peeks, but we should save that. I think we should save that.
Sure. Well, it is, we are starting to drop little morsels for people to, just to whet people's appetites. But it is kind of continuing with this Bruce Lee theme. But by saying Bruce Lee theme, I'm just using that as an umbrella term to cover everything that's been happening. We're living in a very unique time in history. This pandemic has changed a lot, like has shaken up a lot of paradigms for us. And it came with a lot of different responses, where, with the protests and the riots and all of that.
Kung flu.
The Kung flu. Trump was... I'm not going to say that. We might get flagged. Anyways. No, but it is a response to the times. It's not just like, oh, Bruce Lee's cool, let's just do this. But it's nice that what's happening around us is allowing us to... It's kind of adding this nuance to the message that we're trying to spread through our videos. And it's allowing us to say something more than Kung Fu is cool. You know, it's like Kung Fu is cool because given these times, this is a way you can hone your health. Given this time, this is a way you can use what you've spent so much of your blood, sweat, and tears on to make a difference in the world. And I'm really, really thankful that Martial Club gets to communicate in this way. But yes, this will also be in homage to one of the greatest martial artists who ever lived. And it's our own unique take on it. And other greats in the martial arts world have had their chance to give their own 2 cents in this. So this is kind of our rendition, our version. Not saying what it is yet, but I'm sure those of you who have been watching closely have a pretty good idea. Needless to say, it is going to be pretty awesome. One of the highest production values we've ever committed to a project. So hoping it shows in the cinematography, in the level of action, in the set design, all of that. Hopefully people really enjoy this. And you guys will have a much better idea starting within the next few days. So stay tuned. Yeah.
I especially like the social commentary that you guys get to share about... In this, I'm trying not to give away too much, but there is a opportunity to speak to what's happening today with regards to Asian Americans. Where there's like a real direct correlation that you could apply, and
right.
It kind of like, I don't want to say it makes me proud to be an Asian, but it's a real thing we're struggling with today, and I think that the video speaks to that in really, really powerful ways, in ways that I think we could all learn from, and that extend beyond the wow, Martial Club is so cool. Their like combat choreography is fantastic. They're acting so well. No, I mean it means a lot more to a lot of us Asian Americans, because we're really embattled in this day, in 2020. Despite the fact that we have so much progress in the world, we still live in a very racist society.
Right.
And I think I'm often at a loss for words, because we see the headlines, and I support a lot of the headlines. I support a lot of the movements that are happening right now with regards to the protests and George Floyd, but it also makes me sad, because I don't think that there's fair and adequate representation for our plight, and I think that's probably because in general we're easy to forget. Our people are easy to we've been taught to put our heads down and keep marching. You know, like the idiom, the nail that sticks out gets hammered, is an Asian idiom. And it like, I think it's time for us to stick out a little bit and stand up for ourselves in ways that represents our values well, honors our country well, and also like represents change well. So hopefully we'll be able to, this will lead to a tide of people thinking about these sentiments. I'm very, very excited for what you guys are doing in that regard.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. Yeah. On a lighter note, guess who messaged me after the last podcast?
Oh my gosh, did he talk about
it? No, he like, I was curious. I opened the message wondering if he was going to talk about...
And it was just a banana hammock picture.
It was the setup. You know how in fighting there's the jab, the setup, whatever it is.
And then did you say, no, stop it?
I let's just say I used head movement. I didn't even engage. I used footwork.
Nice. Nice.
But yeah, I like with that story fresh on my mind, I'm like, nope. But I feel bad. I haven't even responded. But I'm like,
dude, like
this is going.
No, man. Like I'm getting like, just say it. He was like, hey, I've been working out. Like, can you tell me, what my problem areas are?
Yeah.
Is that what he said? Is that what he said? I
It
bet
was
it's
something
like
something along those lines. I'm not gonna say what it was, but it was something along those lines where it can easily go like, oh, and then he springs the KO blow. You
should just respond with our podcast and our review in the podcast. Just be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I actually had a podcast about this very topic. Here you go. You might want to fast forward to timestamp number blah 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 blah.
I know, right? You might learn
I
something.
wonder if he saw it and in response just tried to, increase your Me Too tolerance or Me Too sympathy.
That should be
Stop
the
doing
name
it,
of our
man.
I know.
Stop doing it.
That should be the title of our next episode: "Born Under Dick Pics," and what kind of person that'll
Oh
make
my
you.
gosh, dude.
All right. On that end, I think we've talked your ears off and maybe given you a little bit of mental scar tissue. You're not getting that back, but you are getting us back soon, and we will see you soon. I think that's a pretty proper send-off message. Do you want anything? Do you want to close this out, Mike?
Thank you so much for reaching the end of episode 5? 4. 5.
4.
5.
4.
4. 4?
4. 4.
We've made it to 4 episodes. You guys who have watched all 3 to date, thank you so much. For those of you who haven't, you're dead to me. Just kidding. Just go back and watch them, and then you won't be dead to me. But no, seriously. For everyone who listens, everyone who dedicates the hours and times, we thank you sincerely from the bottom of our hearts. We know that we're still very unrefined, and we hope that we can bring you some joy, some entertainment, and some levity, and some insight into this very interesting time in history. So thank you again. We appreciate you to death. Feel free to comment below, like and share. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon.
All right. Later.